I want to die with that light in my eyes, the light of traffic, hospital wings, the light of glowing screens. None of it will do. Not even the moon is strong enough to overpower the one light I want. I want to die with that light in my eyes, the light you cannot buy. You cannot get it any other way than by living it. Living that light, and by that I mean your light which only you can shine, your light which is God shining through you relentlessly, always straining at the filters and lenses placed over it by everything, everyone, all the time. Smash them all and let come through this light that only you can shine. You cannot tolerate lies, formulas, conveniences, justifications for losing that light. That light is worth giving up the world if when you die it lights the room. I want to die with that light in my eyes. This week I listened to a podcast with Huberman and Stephen Pressfield. I was hearing this man who I look up to in Pressfield, and there was just something in his voice. There was an aliveness, there was a joy, a smile that made me want to stop listening and look at the video version. I just wanted to see this man. So when I did, I couldn't help but feel, oh man, he looks so good for 65 or however old he is. And of course, later I find out that he's actually 82. And that's what sparked me to write that poem. Because it's just something that you can't fake. This feeling that you get from people who have lived their life and have suffered, certainly, and dealt with their fair share of trials and tribulations and going through the wilderness, but who have come to a place at the end of life where there's just this inescapable spark, this aliveness, this certainty of being oneself. And this is what I want to talk to you about today. Because I think that is kind of the point of life. If you're listening to this, and if you are one of these kinds of people who are devoted to following the thread that life or God or your soul has laid out in front of you, regardless of any price, any sacrifice, any amount of doubt or pressure or uncertainty, you just know that you must follow the thread, then I want to be here with you in that, because that's what I'm doing. And when I look to see people like Stephen and other people, I was listening also to this week to a podcast with Rosalia, who's a great musician. A similar feeling, similar duende, similar excitement, enthusiasm, aliveness that you cannot get any other way than by surrendering to following the thread. And nobody says that following the thread is easy. In fact, if it were easy, you wouldn't get cooked to the place where your prima materia is actually gold. And what I see in somebody like Stephen, he actually looks golden. I mean, maybe it's because he's in the sun a lot, living in California and all, but like these people shine. They shine with the truth of who they actually are, having followed that truth and having cooked that truth down over decades through trials and tribulations, uncertainty, struggles, successes, failures, and to arrive at this place where they just shine. And I just want to, I suppose, point to that as an example of why following your path is worth it. Now, it's not a guarantee that you end up being materially successful. There's no guarantees in life, but it's worth the gamble, I believe, because man, sooner than later, all inauthentic paths are going to be cut off, which is hilarious to me because AI will take away many traditional paths that were offered as a kind of way to stay safe. You will still have an opportunity to stay safe. I'm sure there will still be a way in which the state will paternalize us or give us an opportunity to stay young. Like I really, I know this is probably a controversial opinion. I feel that to take a job or to take a career when you feel inside that you have a thread calling you towards some kind of greater destiny for which you would need to take full responsibility, to choose the safe path is essentially to stay a child, to stay a juvenile, because most people, perhaps rightly so, are afraid of the responsibility required to fully embody your own path and to take on board the uncertainty and the responsibility for containing yourself and grounding yourself and steadying yourself through the immense uncertainty of choosing your own path and creating your own life and following that thread, which is at first and sometimes for long periods of time very hard to hear or find. But if you know that it's there and you take responsibility for it, to me, there is no other surer way of becoming an adult. Because you just can't create the opus that was given to you to create unless you take full responsibility for it. And I think many people are afraid of that because of just how much responsibility it requires. It's just easier to get a job or to follow a traditional path. And if you are a traditional person following a traditional path, you're probably not listening to this, which is absolutely fine. And there are life paths that are very legitimate, and we need those people too. But I speak to people like me, and I speak to my younger self who was confused about this because there are so many sources of pressure: survival pressure, ego pressure, peer pressure, and sources of doubt that will keep you from fully stepping into following your own path. But when I see people like Steven Pressfield, I'm like, oh yeah, that's why we do this. Not to be able to flex some material result, but because the peace in the heart of a person who has followed their own path, regardless of the cost, that is priceless. That is a priceless piece. And you can see the effect of that in how people like that comport themselves and are in the world. And it's a beautiful thing. It's the buoyancy and the light of someone who has actually lived his own life and risked it all to follow. So that's why I wrote this poem, right? Because it's that light in my eyes. I want to die with that. That's the Holy Grail. Yeah. So I want to encourage you, if you are this type of person who has felt a call to destiny, who is following a thread towards some certain and unknown place, but you just feel it absolutely. It is in the core of who you are that you must create your own life. You cannot imitate another. I can't remember that Blake quote, but he gets at that. The essence of that is basically I have to create my own way. I cannot follow another man's system or else I'll be enslaved to it. I must create my own way. And that's who we are here. We are blazing our own trails as entrepreneurs, as creatives, as road openers. We are following this thread. And the bottom line of it is freedom, ultimately. And I don't mean necessarily having the freedom to do whatever it is you want to do in the world, but the internal freedom wherein you know that you are on the path. You know that you have done justice to what God, whatever that is, put in your heart. And you have done your best to follow that. That to me is freedom. That to me is peace. It's like the Gospel of Thomas says, what you bring forth from within will save you. What you do not will kill you. I would like to believe that everyone has something within them to bring forth. Maybe it's not true. Maybe there's people who are just, well, even as I'm speaking, it's like, well, who am I to say that? For example, being a plumber, being an electrician is not bringing forth from within, right? I'm against pedestalizing artists and creatives. I'm against saying that, oh, we're special and we're better than everyone else because we follow such and such. That seems like bullshit to me as well. I think it's a deeper thing. It's being able to listen to what life really wants to do through you and surrendering to it. Even though that means surrendering to a lot of hardship, struggle, uncertainty, going through the wilderness for years, perhaps for decades. And so to speak practically for a moment then, like, that's all good. But how do you make rent? How you pay bills? If you want to bring forth your opus, if you want to start your company, if you want to bring your idea into the world, like how do you actually do this? I think that it's a muscle. I think that there are systems that can help you move through that. And that's what I'm in the process of beginning to articulate. Like, what are these systems? Obviously, energy, focus, relationships, how you contain yourself, frameworks like psychological alchemy that help you see where you are in the process of getting cooked by life. Those are all useful, but it's at the core, it's a muscle that you must develop to stay in the uncertainty, to stay in the cooking process. And I think the best way to stay connected to it is through anything that has you enter into the right brain, that has you in contact with your soul or your higher self or your unconscious, this deeper part of you, because it's very arrogant and erroneous, I believe, to think of ourselves just as the conscious mind. Like who I am talking to you right now is probably only 2, 3, 4% of who I actually am. The deeper part of me is this mystery, this unconscious, who we can be in contact with, who we can speak to using tools like the tarot, using the I Ching, right? We can, through dreams. This is why I'm obsessed with these tools, actually, because to live in the materialist, linear day-to-day while trying to do justice to your thread, your calling, your determination to follow that thread. That is a very difficult thing to do unless you have contact with this oasis within you. It's an oasis. It's an oasis within you that is your soul, that is attempting to help you follow this thread. Why I'm so passionate about this is because how much solace it actually brings you to be in contact with the soul, because the soul is the place from which this desire to be true issues forth. You have this desire to be true to your life. Where does that come from? Who is mediating that between your conscious mind and perhaps God or whomever put that in you? Your soul is the mediator. The soul knows what is right. The soul knows what is true. We must be in contact with it if we're trying to do something in the world that is extraordinary, that is new, that is innovative, that has never been done, that is fresh, that is authentic and original to you. We must be in touch with that because it has messages, it has gifts, it has encouragement, it has a set of adjustments that it would like to give to you. This is what I love about dreams. The dreams are always trying to help us shift our approach so that we are more efficiently and authentically and in integrity bring forth what is within us. So being in constant dialogue with this inner source, and if that is unfamiliar to you, that's the place to start. That's the place where the muscle to deal with the uncertainty of daily life is actually built. It's being in contact with, like, asking real questions. Am I on the right path here? Is this true? This thing that I feel? I have needed a lot of affirmation. I'll just be honest with you. I need constant affirmation from within that this is the right thing. And also, I need to constantly refer to the feeling within of, is this right? Like, I've been experimenting with content this year, and a lot of what I've done has felt like bullshit, just to be honest. A lot of it has felt like I'm just trying to be something that I'm not. And only after cooking it, I've just been cooking it and cooking it and cooking it, while trying to being like, is this really still the way? And the soul's like, yep, keep continuing to show up and cook. All right, here I am again, cooking off the impurities, cooking off the bullshit, cooking off the performative nature, cooking off the, like, what I think it should be, while following the thread. There's a thread there. It wants me to be here. It wants me to show up. And I don't see a different way. Like, it's not like somebody like Steven Pressfield just arrived in this state of luminosity. The exact opposite. He was a wretch. He was a rat. He was a wet rat in a sewer for years and years. I'm sure he would agree with that. That's the vibe I've gotten from listening to him talk. And there's pretty much no artist that I respect who hasn't gone through at least some part of that. No entrepreneur, no creator, no innovator who hasn't gone through some wilderness, who hasn't gone through some period of getting cooked, right? So the muscle gets built over time. It gets built as you get some affirmation from the outside world of, this has made an impact on me, this has been valuable to me. You get these little breadcrumbs. You just keep following thread, or threads. You keep going towards what within feels true and correct. And I wanted to share something from the I Ching because the I Ching talks about this. The I Ching is a 3,000-year-old book. It is an extraordinary body of wisdom that teaches you through you bringing questions to it. And because there's 64 hexagrams, you can only get one out of 64, technically two, but that's anyways, you get taught by the I Ching as you bring questions to it. And often I have asked around, like, is this the right path? Is this what I should be doing? How do I bring this thread that I feel? How do I bring this thing inside of me to fruition? What is the next step? What's the next step? Hexagram 32, duration. It speaks to how there's the paradox between having a clear sense of where you want to go and being able to be flexible and adaptable in it. It says, thunder and wind, the image of duration. Thus the superior man stands firm and does not change his direction. Thunder rolls and the wind blows. Both are examples of extreme mobility, and so are seemingly the very opposite of duration. But the laws governing their appearance and subsidence, their coming and going, endure. In the same way, the independence of the superior man is not based on rigidity and immobility of character. He always keeps abreast of the time and changes with it. What endures is the unswerving directive, the inner law of his being, which determines all of his actions. So the paradox, holding the polarity of, that's where I want to go. I must follow this thread I have been given. And also I must adapt to the nature of the time. I must shift around my tactics, perhaps, in order to stay true to that. And that's something that I just think is so key and fundamental to bringing forth your opus, bringing forth your vision, because it's not like I'm saying you should just be stubbornly in this one idea, maybe your first idea of how your opus, how your thread, how your life will come true or be true. We watched this documentary that they mentioned on that podcast called My Big Break. And in it, there's this guy who's trying to be an actor, and spoiler alert, he never makes it. Even though he's the most stubborn, like, I'm gonna do this or I'm gonna die trying, basically. He never makes it. And it's because I think he is too stubborn in his ways, not adaptive enough to move with the shifting tides. He's too attached to what he believes is the ultimate form of his opus. And the thing about it is that the opus, or your following of your thread, your destiny, it's not necessarily encapsulated in one form, like I must be an author, I must have a best-selling book, or I must be an actor, I must get on the big screen in Hollywood. Your opus, your true life, your life lived so that when you die, you have the light in your eyes, that can only be danced with. It can only be danced into reality. You have to dance with reality to bring it forth. And that means sometimes changing and being adaptable and flexible to how it actually comes about, because we don't actually know. We think we know what the form is. Our ego gets attached to it. We get stubborn. Then we kind of fail to read the signs. And that's why, again, to go back to the soul, being in contact with the soul, this deeper part of us, the soul knows what is the right turn to take if we come to a crossroads, right? So it's a paradox of being both very connected to what is the actual true direction for my life that I must follow, It's a feeling inside. I must be true to that. And then also, how might I be in conversation with life and read the room of life so that I can adapt to life and be in a dance with it so I can bring this thing forth, which might be, for now, I have this job while I do this thing. Or I thought it was going to be this form. It's actually going to be this form for now. But at the very core of you, underneath, is this absolute devotion to being true, an absolute devotion to being true and taking responsibility for that, right? So I think that's what I wanted to say this week is just like, if you are on the non-traditional, non-linear path to success, as I had somebody last week tell me, he was on and I am on. Love that phrase, the non-traditional, non-linear path to success. If you are on this path, then you have signed up for a direct relationship with the mystery of life and a direct relationship to soul and a absolute and total responsibility to bring that forth. And that means getting cooked and getting boiled down and going through unestimable wildernesses for as long as it takes to cook down and boil off the dross and actually have gold and be gold. And if you are excited about that, then you are in the right place, my friend. If you get enthusiasm and goosebumps and you're just like, yeah, LFG, then you are in the right place. Like that is a sign from within. If you have that feeling, I get that feeling. And that's what I'm trying to do with this podcast, is just like speak about this and have people begin to gather around this fire who are of like mind, because that's why I love smashing together entrepreneurship, creativity, and inner work, because to me, it's one of the clearest paths to individuation, to stepping into your own life and being of service through that. All right. So I hope you have an amazing week. Let me know how this hits you. I feel like I could have spoken more to the practical aspects. Somewhat of a trial and error system, right, that you develop for yourself, what keeps you contained as you move through this. But I'll be speaking more to that. And I think ultimately that'll be the subject of an offering that I create. I'm thinking about creating a cohort for people like you and I to come together and learn the tools and systems that will actually help us to be in relationship to ourselves and to our business or to our creativity or to our opus, and enjoy it and be in the process and enjoy it and have it be a sustainable long-term endeavor, right? Because I'm just so there's systems for monetizing things that can be talked about. There's all the business stuff. That's all interesting. But the deepest thing is, who are you being on this path, right? All right. So we did it. And I hope you have a great week. And I'll see you again next week as we continue these conversations about inner work, entrepreneurship, and creativity. Like and subscribe. Leave me a comment. Bye for now. Peace.